Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody, and happy Wednesday. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to the Morris County Chamber for the opportunity to present Hot Off the Flashes, an Eastern medicine approach to all things women health from menses through menopause. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction as to what is acupuncture. Acupuncture is over 2,500 years old, and it is a non-surgical, non-pharmacological method of healing. That basically means we don't use surgery, we don't use drugs. What we do use are hair-fine needles that we insert into different areas of the body to create some kind of response within your nervous system. Typically, we're releasing neurotransmitters and endorphins. And our goal is to balance your sympathetic fight or flight with your parasympathetic rest and digest to create homeostasis. Now, many of you are familiar with this little symbol that you see behind the word homeostasis. It's known as the yin-yang symbol. And Chinese medicine principles are really predicated upon yin and yang. And most people know it as opposites, dark, light, day, night, but it's really more than that. They are rooted in one another. And that's one of the reasons that you see the small circles within the larger circles. And they continue to kind of move and balance each other out based on whether when there's a deficit of one, the other becomes stronger and vice versa. So in Western medicine, think of it in terms of your body's biofeedback. And as we go through this presentation, you can think about your sympathetic fight or flight as qi, which is in Chinese medicine, your body's vital energy. I like to refer to it as your nervous system because that's really what it is. It's the movement, it's your signaling, it's your body's fluid physiology. And then we're balancing that with your blood. And your blood is obviously what oxygenates and nourishes your organ systems. So we're going to start with a really quick overview of the women's cycle. I know most of you know this, although there are things that I know that I was not taught until I started my fertility journey. But we all know that a woman's monthly cycle is her body's way of preparing her for potential pregnancy. And your cycle is actually counted from the first day of your cycle to the first day of your next cycle. So a lot of times I'll ask patients, how long is your cycle? And they'll be like, oh, 5 or 6 days. And I'm like, nope, day 1 to day 1. And if you ever go to an acupuncturist, you will be asked about your cycle every time you go. And that's because for us, you know, while we plan with a month, we are lucky in a sense that we have a very informative monthly diagnostic of information what's happening in the body. So immediately after menstruation, our body starts to release what's called FSH, follicle stimulating hormones. And this is during that first half of our cycle. I know my connection's unstable. Hopefully I'm back. And during this time is when we start to develop those follicles that have the immature eggs. We develop multiple follicles, but only one will ultimately be the winner. And as our FSH rises, so does our estrogen. It's like a feedback system. And then as the estrogen goes up, we start to release GnRH, which then forces our body to release LH. LH is luteinizing hormone. And that's the one, when it hits a peak, is the one that causes ovulation. And of course, we're still developing follicles until we get that one lead follicle. About 3 days before ovulation, we're going to get that LH surge. This is when it's ideal for men and women to procreate if they're trying to have children. And women who are experiencing ovulation will know for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, you'll usually get a rise in your basal body temperature. So that's your body's temperature on waking. And that's one signal. The other is that you'll notice a change in your cervical mucus. So it becomes very clear. It looks like an egg white and very stringy. And that's to help if there is a fertilized egg, it's to help the sperm make its way to the egg to fertilize it. So you're going to have this LH surge and you're going to ovulate. And the follicle that releases the egg then becomes the corpus luteum. And it starts secreting progesterone. And if a fertilized egg makes its way into the fallopian tubes and into the uterus, you will start to produce HCG, human chorionic gonadotropin. I think I got that right. And that's the hormone that we measure to know that you're pregnant. And of course, if you're not successful, you menstruate. So I go through all of this because it's important to realize we've just talked about 5 or 6 different hormones. So when someone says, well, you're being hormonal, yeah, you are, because these are the things that your body goes through if everything is normal. And we're going to talk about things that can knock your body off kilter. In and of itself, the menstrual cycle is a very complex feedback system, and its reproduction is run by what's called the HPG axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary gonadal axis. So all of those hormones I just referenced they're triggered by different things that happen along that axis. Well, that's not all. We've got another axis called the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And many of you are familiar with this. This is our stress response. So through a cascade of signals, we release cortisol when we're stressed. Now, what's interesting is that the areas of the brain that are responsible for mood regulation not only contain copious amounts of cortisol receptors, but they also comprise the largest concentration of estrogen receptors. So that's reason number 1 for mood. Number 2, we have something called the pregnenolone steal. So pregnenolone is a precursor to estrogen and progesterone. So when you're not balanced, when those two aren't balanced, you can experience amenorrhea, which is an absence of your period, acne, or abnormal hair growth. Good times. Now we can add another possibility that happens here. So your HPA axis releases DHEA. Many of you have seen these in supplement form. It's produced by the adrenal glands, and it supports bone density, sexual function, and helps control body weight. Well, when your DHEA is low, the body converts testosterone, and yes, women do produce low amounts of testosterone, and what little DHEA you have into estrogen. And this causes estrogen dominance. What are some of the fun things we experience when we have estrogen dominance? Irritability, insomnia, headaches, depression, weight gain, particularly through the hips, fibroids, cysts, memory issues, low sex drive, PMS, and fatigue. Again, these are not because you're doing something external. Well, it could be external stressors, but these are very normal responses because your body has all of these chemicals and this whole biofeedback system at play that's knocked off kilter. Remember when I just showed you that yin and yang symbol, that sympathetic and parasympathetic. So when you're stressed, you're too much in fight or flight, or you can also be too much rest and digest. That's when you gain weight. Those women tend to develop more of like the PCOS, the hypothyroid type of things that affect their monthly cycle. I should also note that the HPA axis is affected by pregnancy, and depending on how much your hormones shift, and it's a little bit, the dysregulation is very different for each woman, but that's why some women have a more difficult time postpartum. So I like to let you know you're not crazy. You have a lot of things happening within your system that you just simply don't have control over all of it. So, you know, we go through menstruation for many years. We may or may not have children. And then we start to hit menopause and perimenopause. So the $1,000 question I always get is, how do I know if I'm going through menopause? And the reality is that menopause can start very early for a woman. Some women can go through menopause, and this is obviously not if they have any surgical issues like having their ovaries removed or anything, any major surgery that can send them into early menopause. An incredibly stressful life situation can send you into menopause early. So if you lose somebody that matters to you, or you, God forbid, have cancer, those types of things can send you into early menopause, extremely stressful situations. I think it will be interesting, and I don't know, if they'll be tracking this, but it would be interesting to see what this period with COVID will cause. But as you can see here, menopause can be a bit of a beast. And why does this happen? Well, as we approach menopause, those hormones that I spoke about earlier, particularly your FSH and your hormone levels, they start to shift, which causes a reactivity within that HPA axis that I referenced. And there's a form of estrogen that's called estradiol. Well, estradiol and progesterone, they also play a role in regulating in that feedback mechanism within the HPA axis. So when there's a deficit of these hormones, your cortisol goes up, and that affects these axes both, and really can affect that perimenopausal and menopausal woman, manifesting in difficulty sleeping, irritability, anxiety, negative moods, and other issues. So simply put, stress really can mess with your HPA axis, which then affects your HPG axis. The good news is there are some supplements that can help mitigate some of these shifts. So ashwagandha's, I just learned about ashwagandha when I became a doctor of acupuncture, and I actually learned about it from a patient. And it's been shown in clinical studies to reduce stress and anxiety in adults, and may also help modulate moods. The only potential contraindication that I've noted is that women who have diabetes should, of course, check with their physician. And I like to tell women, look, just because they're supplements and they're vitamins and they're natural, they're considered safe, but they can have side effects. So before you start taking any supplements, you should speak with your physician. Vitamin B6 plays a role in the production of neurotransmitters, lots of the feel-good ones like serotonin and dopamine. And it can also be helpful in premenstrual mood support. The B vitamins in general, B6, B12, women, I find, tend to, especially once we hit our 40s and 50s, become deficient. So that's a real easy one that you can just check when you get your blood work every year, or you can just start boosting it. Start with, a low supplementation. It'll give you energy. It'll help your moods. It's a great one. A lot of people, particularly as they hit their mid-50s, start with melatonin supplementation. Melatonin is naturally released by our pineal gland in periods of darkness, and it's to help regulate our sleep cycle. So when you have issues with your sleep cycle, difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, many women start to take melatonin. But I try to recommend to patients that really should be a short-lived approach. Not only is it not necessarily safe for pregnant women, so again, check with your practitioner, but it also can have side effects like headache, short-term feelings of depression, daytime sleepiness, dizziness, stomach cramps, irritability. And the other thing about that is you don't want to prevent your body from learning how to do or not recognizing how to do what it needs to do on its own. That's one of the reasons acupuncture is so effective, is we help regulate those signals again so that your body gets back to doing what it already knew how to do before we had all of the stressors or too much laziness, for lack of a better word. Another really great supplement is L-theanine, and that's the amino acid that's found in tea, and it helps transmit nerve impulses within the brain. It's been shown to increase serotonin and dopamine, again, some of those feel-good neurotransmitters, and it can also promote the relaxation that's needed for improved sleep. It's non-drowsy, it's not habit-forming, so that may be a really good option for you to help manage that cortisol rhythm, de-stress the body, and help you fall asleep. Now, we just talked about how those neurotransmitters, and if you remember, I spoke about neurotransmitters as qi, the body's nervous system and ability to regulate systems. We need to be in balance, but we also, as we age, need to make sure that we work on the level of the blood. So when you start to go through perimenopause and menopause, your hair dries, your skin dries, you experience vaginal dryness. So you have this literal drying out, and your blood becomes less viscous, less nourished. And that's what's taking care of your organ systems. So the more that we can do to take care of our blood and make it rich and nutrient so that it nutrient filled so that it can help our organs, the better off we're going to be. And then if we can balance our qi or our nervous system to send that blood through our body, the better off we're going to be. And there are a lot of fruits and vegetables that we can eat to help ourselves. And I speak about fruits, veggies, and seeds for my vegetarian audience. If you don't eat meat, really focus on the red fruits and berries and the red vegetables. Beets are phenomenal. I will tell you, for the meat eaters, this is where we win, is Chinese medicine is not anti-red meat. In fact, with red meat and liver in particular, which, not to say you should eat it extremely often, but those are phenomenally blood boosting. And there are actually some aminos that are found in meat that don't exist naturally in vegetables. So here's a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, seeds, and meats that you can eat to nourish your blood. You can also try something called seed cycling. So when we were going through your cycle, we talked about estrogen and progesterone, but some women don't produce enough and some women produce too much. And seed cycling is a really easy, great way to balance your hormones to ensure that you're producing the right amounts of each. And it's really simple to do. So days 1 through 14, that's your follicle stimulating phase. You're going to eat 1 tablespoon per day each of flax and pumpkin seeds. And then on days 15 through 28, you're going to switch to sesame or sunflower seeds. If your cycle is longer than 28 days, you'll want to follow the lunar cycle. So kind of up to half moon and then half moon to full moon. And what this does is it facilitates the production and the metabolism of estrogen and progesterone, helps to regulate your menses, treats polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, assists with fertility, eases hot flashes. We have a guest who's joined us today who said she was in the middle of a flash as we spoke. Night sweats, fatigue, mood swings, all of those fun things associated with menopause. I will tell you it takes about 3 months whenever you're dealing at the hormonal level to start to see noticeable changes, but there's no risk here other than you may be getting sick of seeds, but it's not like you're eating them at every meal. It's 1 tablespoon a day of each, depending where you are in the given cycle. Other things that you can do to support healthy hormones. Well, you want to exercise. You want to make sure that you are doing everything you can to support your body's yang, that vibrance, that activity. Exercise increases blood flow to your organs. If you do it outside, you're exposed to the sun, you're getting vitamin D. That enhances your mood. Vitamin D also has neuroprotective mechanisms and can protect against everything from osteoporosis to cancer and depression. And interestingly, I read on Medscape last week, now this is not proven, but they are seeing links that people who have strong vitamin D levels may be less susceptible to COVID-19. So my attitude is, you've got nothing to lose. Most of us, particularly who live in the Northeast, are vitamin D deficient. Start with 2,000 milligrams. If you're in the menopause, perimenopause phase, you might want to move up to 5,000 milligrams. You can do that safely. Again, talk to your practitioner if you're concerned, but those are things that you can do. You want to then take that exercise regimen and balance it with sleep, your yin cycle. This is when your body is doing its best healing. I've said this before if you've heard me on presentations, or if you're a patient of mine, the number one thing we can do for our health is get proper rest. That is when your organs heal. Shut off all electronics 45 minutes before bed, even if they have a blue light. I recommend, if you like to read on a book, read a book or a magazine, something that doesn't have any light. You can start a gratitude journal, help reset your brain. We talked earlier about melatonin. If you don't want to rely on supplementation, one of the things that you could do is drink tart cherry juice, organic, so it's mixed with nothing. You can mix it a little bit with water. I have patients who put it in wine glass just to make them feel elegant. You can do that 45 minutes before bed, and that will absolutely improve sleep. It works in about 85% of my patients. That's, again, anecdotally reported, but 85% is a pretty high number. Reduce your stress. So sleeping well and exercising, feeling grateful for things does help reduce stress. And again, you want to try to mitigate your body's response and production of cortisol, because you don't want to leave the estrogen in its wake and then go through that myriad symptoms that I described earlier. Eat real food. I know it's really hard nowadays to know what's in everything you eat, even if you eat fresh fruits and vegetables, preferably organic. We can't all afford to eat organic, but the best that you can do to eat real foods and reduce the herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, which, by the way, again, affect all of that feedback, both of those feedback systems I referenced earlier. It's a simple thing that you can do to help yourself. And of course, get acupuncture. Acupuncture helps your body when it's, when you're just imbalanced. We help your body restore that balance. We help get you out of fight or flight, reduce the stress, reduce the inflammation, so that all of the other things that you're doing to help nourish and move blood throughout your body, acupuncture also helps nourish and move the blood throughout your body, so that all of the things that you're doing, your body can get maximum benefit from. I do want to take a moment, because while we talk about the menstrual cycle and we know it's our body's way of preparing us for pregnancy, that may not be on every woman's journey. And for those women where it is on your journey, unfortunately, 1 in 8 of us experience fertility issues. I happen to fall into that category. And I know, not just from studies, that acupuncture has, in general, about a 50% rate in helping women achieve and maintain pregnancy who have difficulty achieving pregnancy, but also for women who go through assisted reproduction, like in vitro or intrauterine insemination. It's phenomenal. How does it work? Well, for women, it helps, again, balance your hormone. It can improve your cervical mucus. optimize ovarian function, so making sure that the ovaries are moving those eggs out, helping to bring better eggs. We have our limited supply of eggs, so helping that maturity process, and then making sure that we get a good clean ovulation of our very best egg. Improving blood flow to the uterus and ovaries. So for those of you out there that are going through IUI or IVF, highly recommend that you have acupuncture just prior to your embryo transfer and just post embryo transfer. And prior and post really should be within hours, but at the very least, like day of embryo transfer pre, day later post at the latest. That helps improve the thickness of the lining, and again, helps that embryo embed. I also want to point out, for those of you who are dealing with fertility issues, there's a reason it takes a man and a woman to make a baby, and it's not always a woman's issue. So before you start coming for acupuncture, pumping your body with any kind of anything, putting yourself through hell, the male needs to be tested as well, because just as frequently, not quite just as frequently, but oftentimes the issue doesn't lie with the woman. And acupuncture is phenomenal at helping increase motility, which is the movement of male sperm, increasing overall count. I will say, when you're seeking treatment for fertility, it does take at least 3 to 6 months before you start noticing changes. Although many women typically get pregnant within that 3 to 6 month mark, we never make guarantees, but really often you will see success within, I know I'm unstable, within that 6 to 12 month range. So I will take questions in a moment. I do want to let you know that if acupuncture is something that you're interested in learning more about and you want to have a consultation, we typically charge for that consultation. And when you come in, we will go through your health history, understand what it is you're looking to be treated for, and give you a sense of what a treatment plan for whatever that is that you want to be treated for might look like, or whether we think acupuncture isn't going to benefit you and refer you out. I'm part of the Health and Wellness Committee for the Morris County Chamber, and May is what we're calling May Days. And while this isn't a May Day presentation, we are donating, or I've agreed to donate any of the consultation fees for the month of May to the Mental Health Association if you mention this presentation. So at this time, I will open the floor up to questions, and I appreciate your time, and I hope you learned something.
All right, Lauren, thank you so much. This is really fantastic information. Like you said, it's a lot of detail. I think Debbie Wolpow joked in the chat, I hope there's not a test.
Well, so, and that's, I tried to simplify it.
No, it was in layman's terms. It was good, I know.
We aren't simple, and that's the point, is we're made to feel like we're crazy and we have all these things going on, but the reality is, now you know why. And it's not just the hormonal axis we have. Men have the HPA axis too. They actually have the HPG one, but a different set of hormones, and obviously not quite as many that they're dealing with.
Lucky them.
Yeah.
All right, so before we launch into questions, I already see one. I just want to make some announcements for the chamber. As you said, we're having the May Day Health is on the Way, hosted by none other than Wendy Long, who is on this call. Hi, Wendy. It's through the Health and Wellness Committee in the chamber, but it is open to all. Our final May Day is this Friday at 3 o'clock, so please join us for that. They're a lot of fun. It's a really great group. Tomorrow, we also have another great webinar, Transitioning Back to the Workplace, What Companies Need to Know. It'll offer guidance on how you can put policies into place to keep your employees and your customers safe. So I think that'll be fantastic information, and that's at 11 tomorrow. So I do see a question here from Debbie again. When can you see patients again?
We're back. So we reopened our offices last week. I should point out that we were never required to close. So the state of New Jersey didn't require us to close. We are considered essential healthcare practitioners. Many physicians who were not on the front line opted to close just to help flatten the curve, and we were among them. It was also obviously concerning when PPE was harder to get, but I'm happy to say we are back. We are open, we are treating patients. I appreciate the question because I should let you know that we always had very strong protocols. We are, run by the Department of Consumer Affairs. We are licensed professionals. So we do and see.
Can you start that over, Lauren? I'm sorry, you're all robot-y again.
Sure.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I wanted to say, no problem. We are back since last week. We were never actually required to close. We were considered essential healthcare practitioners, but am I still good?
You're good now.
Like many in New Jersey, acupuncture and non-acupuncture alike, we opted to close to help flatten the curve for frontline workers, and also because there was a shortage of PPE earlier on. Now we are back. We've added more protocols like any other healthcare practitioner, enhanced. We're following CDC guidelines. Like everybody, you've got to wear a mask. We're taking temperatures. There's no touching doors. We call you up. So it's very safe. And and acupuncture has all of those immune boosting qualities to it. And when you reduce inflammation from cortisol, you boost your immune system. So please come join us. We're happy to help you.
I'm excited to hear that you're back open. That's fantastic news.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Give people a moment. Let's see.
How'd we do on time?
We're doing great on time. A couple minutes early even. Wendy says great job. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy.
I really have to try to make it to the Health and Wellness May Day this Friday. I've usually been too busy to stick around for the whole thing, but I've been sad to leave when I've had to. They're a lot of fun.
Oh.
So
I just see that Debbie wrote melatonin is a preventive for COVID. Haven't seen that one, but I will certainly research it. Medscape, for those of you who just like a lot of information, is a great, you can go to medscape.com. It's a conglomeration of information from healthcare practitioners. So I'll type it into the chat. It's what's happening in research. So obviously there's not been enough research for a long enough period of time that follows the scientific method, but they will report what doctors around the world are seeing as it relates to COVID and other diseases.
Great, good to know. Lois is asking, do you have recommendations for brands of seeds?
So I happen to love, I think they're called, I want to say I think TerraCycle might be the recyclable bag. I buy mine when Home Goods is open. I love Home Goods. They have great organic seeds. I want to say they're called TerraCycle. I know you, Lois, so I will text you a picture of my seed bags. But honestly, even ShopRite brand is sufficient.
Good to know. Don't make me want to go back to Home Goods even more once this is over. I miss it right now.
I know, I miss it tremendously. No, I don't soak my seeds, Debbie. I love my seeds on salads. So that's part of how I beef up the protein in my salads.
I like that idea.
And I know people who like flax, they'll put it like in morning yogurt, things like that, which actually, speaking of yogurt, I should say for perimenopausal and menopausal women in particular, our bodies become a lot less tolerant of certain foods as we age. So it's best to try to cut down or eliminate dairy. And you might even find that you'll start to develop gluten intolerances. It doesn't mean that you have celiac disease, doesn't mean you can never have gluten again, but you might find, like for me, dairy became something, you know, I didn't have any digestive issues, but I noticed that I break out now when I have dairy. And it's just the way my body is changing. I still eat gluten. I don't generally have problems. The dairy also, I noticed, caused me more brain fog. So it's inflammatory in nature. And that's why it's, you know, if you're already dealing with inflammation from too much cortisol, you don't want to be exacerbating it with certain foods. Yes, Lois, make sure you chew your seeds. That is an excellent point, especially for people who suffer from diverticulitis. This may not be your best option. Well, or a good option at all. If you have diverticulitis, don't seed cycle.
Huh, all right. Let's see. If there are no other questions or comments, we'll wrap up.